Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Kevin, and welcome back to ChangeWorks Interactive. And today I have a special guest of mine. I'm going to try not to laugh because Dan and I are good friends, and we go back a lot of years and a lot of funny stories, some of which you're not going to hear today, of course. But I want to introduce Dan because Dan is a very interesting person and, like I said, a special friend. Dan's a writer, he's a producer, he's an academic researcher as well. He's a technology entrepreneur. And also, Dan is teaching down at Carleton and TMU, close to us. Dan's also worked on a number of different applications for AI and virtual reality. He's produced 12 TV series. He's done 9 films and over 50 games. He's worked for a company that he started called Toon Rush, and he keeps himself busy with plenty of different things. Dan, welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Kev.
Great. Dan, I was really excited about talking with you today because there's a number of things that you're working on that you do where you have a very good perspective. You got your thumbprint all over a lot of different things. Because I'm a therapist, I'm always interested in student mental health, things that are happening in schools, mental health in general. But let's kind of kick off a little bit with some of the projects maybe that are near and dear to your heart. If you can, Dan, maybe just for our viewers, run through a little bit of a chronology maybe of some of the things that you've worked on and some of the things that that have led you to the point where you're working on AI projects. A guy like me, that just goes right over my head. I don't understand AI. I don't know where that's going. I don't know anything about the meta universe. So maybe you could help us a little bit with that.
All right. Well,
I know it's a long question.
yeah, no, it's a long question.
Yeah.
Let me just sort of process that.
Okay.
I started off in the mid '90s with really a passion for both doing things that are creative and technology. So my background was sort of oriented more to technology, and but I managed to get involved in using technology to create content. So back in the early web days, we put animated cartoons on the internet, and it was kind of a fun thing. And eventually, some of those fun activities became quite popular, and we ended up, one of our cartoons was called Chili Beach, and it ended up picked up by CBC, and we ran for several seasons. And it was a really fun experience, but my sort of contribution to all of that, besides really the joy of the comedy and the animation, was working on some of the technology that underpinned that experience. So I'd say everything that I've always done is about creating digital experiences and bringing together technology and creativity, and also finding a way to pay for it all. So that's always the challenge, right? You're binding together technology, creative storytelling, and some level of business prowess to pay the bills. Over the years, I've continued to do that. We ran an animation studio. We did a number of animated TV series, and probably 2/3 of what we required were technology people, CG animators, riggers, technical directors. So that was always a fun thing. About 10 to 15 years ago, the TV market where we were kind of focused upon was challenged. A lot of broadcasters were losing money, and new entrants like Netflix and Amazon were really dominating the space, and since then have dominated globally. And the traditional broadcasters, who were our customers initially for animated TV, were really struggling. So we thought at the time, given that, we would lean a little bit more into the gaming side and the AI side, and also immersive types of applications. So AI, VR, and gaming. We still do a little bit of storytelling and animated TV, but I'd say 80% of what we do is creating applications that are immersive, generally games or educational applications. So we have one educational application called Campus VR, where students put the headset on from anywhere in the world, and they show up in a boardroom, which is very similar to the boardroom at formerly Ryerson University, and they would just be in a classroom. One person would be in Tokyo, another person in Stockholm, another person in Sudbury, somebody else in California, and it's all like we're in the same room, and it's quite neat. So we've been doing that, and some games, having a lot of fun.
That's very awesome. Again, I'm a total newbie at this, Dan, so you got to break it down for me. With AI, I know there's a lot of fear out there. I know there's a lot of people that are thinking, okay, all of this creative stuff that we're working on these days, this is going to result in people losing their jobs. This is not going to be good for society. How would you counter that? How would you counter that argument? Or would you counter that argument?
It's a good question. Well, I think there are legitimate concerns. I mean, AI is maybe the first technology that's really accelerating things. So we're at a point where things are moving very quickly. Is there going to be some job displacement? I think so, temporarily. But I do also think that it's going to create more opportunities, and some of which we don't even understand right now. One of the advantages to AI tools is that it allows you to do something for a fraction of the cost. So where we might look at a project that was $1 million to do, you'd look at it and say, no, we could never do that project. But now with AI, maybe that project's $100,000, so you're more likely to take a bite of it and say, okay, I'll hire 3 people. I don't have to hire 30, but I can hire 3. So we're seeing a lot of incremental activity. A lot of smaller companies are taking small bites and actually creating some opportunities. So it's going to be interesting. I think there will be a lag time, and there's going to be a transition, but I do think that there's all sorts of things that can happen. I see us building all kinds of virtual worlds and interacting and educating socially in those spaces in ways that we, don't typically imagine today.
That's a good point, Dan. Give us an idea about maybe some of the applications that you've run across, or maybe even created yourself, that are pretty darn cool, or that really would lend itself really well to working in the education space.
Yeah, so when we typically, let's take a course in history. If you wanted to learn about Greek history or the history of European civilization, you would typically take a textbook and read a little bit, and most recently a professor might present some videos so you get a look at it, or some web pages, and they might discuss it. Who knows, if you're lucky and you had several $1,000s to burn, you might take a field trip. But what if you could literally jump into ancient Egypt and take a look at how the pyramids were built, or go to Greece and now you're at the Acropolis and you've recreated those worlds in perfect, high fidelity scenarios, and the avatars are real, and by the way, they're intelligent. So if you wanted to sit down and next to Aristotle and ask him a few questions, you could.
Yeah. Is that essentially what you were trying to do with Campus VR? Is that create those educational experiences where people are, completely immersed in a learning environment?
Exactly. Yeah. So if you wanted to analyze something, if you had a 3D model in front of you of the universe, you could walk around it and touch things and say, okay, that's Earth, that's Mars, that's Uranus, that's Venus, kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, being able to experience things that you could not otherwise. So literally going to anywhere in the world and anywhere in time too. So you can't go to ancient Greece or ancient Egypt, but you could digitally. Yeah. And I don't think people realize the quality and the fidelity that they're going to experience in the next 10 to 15 years.
Is the fear a bit overblown, in your opinion, about the question that I asked you earlier about whether it's going to
Ruin the world.
Yeah, ruin the world and destroy mankind, and
Yeah.
this is going to be a horrible thing.
I think it's typical for all technology to create that fear. I think it happened with the printing press. It happened with the television. It happens with the cell phone. People talk about how the cell phones are ruining civilization, and they all have double-edged effects, right? So they offer a lot of value, but they also create negative consequences. I think AI and some of this new technology, this immersive technology like VR, is going to do the same. I mean, there'll be negative consequences, but there'll also be really incredible positive things that push us forward. So I think it's net positive. I'm more of an accelerationist. When you start to let AI out of the bag, you're better to, now that it's out and people are deploying it all over the world, and it's not just North America, you're better to dive in and lean into it because it has the potential to be utilized in negative ways for sure. So you're best to allow your strongest, best, brightest people to create positive applications with that technology. And just to be smart about how you deploy it, because I think it's going to change the world in very positive ways. I think overall it's going to create new opportunities, but it will take some time, and it'll take some smart people and smart decision making in government and in large businesses.
Yeah, I want to just touch on, Dan, switch gears a little bit on you, and because you get an opportunity as a professor to interact with students all the time, and you get to hear about their concerns and their hopes and wishes for the future, and so on and so forth. What's your opinion on the effect of AI? And I'm going to ask the question because I'm the mental health guy, right? So I'm going to ask the question. What effect do you think these technologies are going to have on young people's mental health? Because I know that's always been a concern of parents, whether it's the cell phone or whether it's video or whether it's AI tools or whatever it is that's out there. There's always going to be that concern about the impact on young people's mental health. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think technology, in particular the mobile phone, has had a negative impact on the mental health of young people. I think they're a little too immersed in it, and I do think that truly immersive technology where you can get people away from that screen in front of their face, I think is going to make a difference. I also think that always-on nature is a little bit of a challenge. And I did a lot of research when I was at Carleton University related to health of students. And we saw, between I think 2010 and 2018, it just went off the charts, where something like 60% of students claimed to have really traumatic experiences, and they weren't processing things well. And a lot of that might have been due to technology, but one of the things that we were looking at was, I wonder, if technology can prime people and affect them in really negative ways, in exploitive ways, like when you're watching a video or you're on social media, there's something being sold to you. At any moment, you're being manipulated in ways that you are not aware of. So part of my research was, are there ways that we can use that same intelligence, that same technology, to prime people or affect them in positive ways, right? So technology can be used for both positive and negative. So how can we use technology in positive ways to reduce that anxiety? So student anxiety was through the roof. Could we do things to reduce that anxiety?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I remember when you were doing your research at Carleton, and you were talking about this whole area called priming, right? And obviously, you're quite interested in it still, and you're writing a book about it. Tell us, give us a little bit more information on what priming is and why it's important.
So priming is generally a thought or an idea that gets seeded prior to an action or an activity. So an example is, if I started talking to you about, let's say the ocean, and then I said to you, Kevin, what's your favorite soap for what's your favorite soap?
I got to go with Irish Spring, Dan.
Well, or okay, you just fail. No. So if I'm talking about the ocean, you might immediately come to, the idea of tide. So
Okay.
more people would sort of be primed because it triggers certain areas of.
Oh, so I completely messed that up.
No, because Irish Spring, I like it too.
Yeah. Of course.
No, but I guess it's the idea of doing things that affect you in may not be a negative or positive way. So one example was in a wine store, they were selling German wine and French wine. And the comparable bottles of wine, comparable prices, and comparable dryness. And over a course of several weeks, they would play German music and they would play French music intermittently. And they would measure the sales of German or French music during those times. And interestingly enough, something like 83% of the time when they played German music, people bought German wine. Wow. And similarly, 75 or 80% of the time when they played French music, they bought French wine, as you can imagine. And when they asked people, do you think anything in your environment affected the purchase of wine, they had no, there's nothing that affected even though they were cognitively primed by that music playing. It was ambient music in the background. So much of what we see that's a case with music, but with technology, you pick up things, for example, on a web page when you're on Facebook, things that are in the sort of periphery that have a tremendous impact on you. So you're affected by that, and that makes you vulnerable to all sorts of things. Ultimately, they're trying to sell you something, and that's not bad. I'm not against e-commerce, but when it's always on all the time and you're exposed to media for long periods of time, it becomes negative.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Dan, we were talking about AI, the effect on us societally, what's gonna happen. It was funny because just before this, we were talking to, giving some advice to parents and young people on fields of work that they should be involved in. Can you think off the top of your head about, or are there any fields of work that are not going to be impacted by AI? That somebody that's going into the workforce, for example, should they know about a particular field that they might be interested in and the effect that AI is going to have on that field of work?
I think AI is going to affect every field. I think the challenge is finding a field and understanding what the impact AI will have. I mean, I can't think of a field that it won't affect. Even things like plumbing. I mean, you'd think, okay, plumbing is a pretty hands-on profession.
Yeah, because I've heard that before too.
Yeah,
tradespeople are going to almost be exempt from this.
Yeah, so I think there's anything that that is physical. I think will have a less of an impact. On the other hand, I can see plumbers using technology to optimize how they actually plan and how they design their solutions. So I do think it's going to touch everything, but I think the more physical the job is, you're less likely. A lot of people say, well, robots are going to take that away. I'm less bullish on the whole concept of robots. I think AI, the intelligence process, offers a lot of value. I don't feel a huge need to have a robot run around my house and do stuff for me right now, so I think that's a little bit further out, maybe 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
But I do think AI is going to provide great intelligence and information in almost any profession, right? But I think it also requires people who know how to apply that in a business context, in a technology context. So I think understanding how to apply AI to business processes, like I don't even pretend, I mean, I live in a very, narrow domain of life and education and making games and VR apps. But I mean, anything that's related to production or manufacturing, I mean, there's going to be all kinds of opportunities to apply AI in creative ways. So AI is not just this one big tool that's just, you just put the hammer down and it does everything. I think people who know how to thoughtfully apply AI will still see a lot of opportunities. I think experiences, there'll be new experiences. I think immersive experiences, give it 5 years and you'll be blown away by the things you'll be able to do in the headset, you know?
Yeah, yeah. What I fear is even what we're doing now,
Yeah.
a face-to-face conversation that we're having, or you think of somebody that is initiating a friendship,
Right.
or making that connection with somebody that they care about, in a relationship. And I think we have to practice those skills. We have to be able
Absolutely.
to practice those skills. I'm hoping that the AI world is going to help us with that. But I fear some of this is going to be lost. I feel like some of this is going to be lost, that people are in some ways perhaps losing the ability to communicate with each other. Or would you counter that argument?
No, I actually think you're right. I think people feel there's a need to connect. They're trying to connect. It's funny, literally today we had an exercise in the class where I asked the teams to break up into their teams of 4. And I said, imagine a world where there's no cell phones, there's no internet. I want you to design a game. And the game has to, have a set of rules and constraints, and tell us how that game's going to educate or entertain us. And so there were about 13 teams, and they invariably, every one of them, created a game, non-technology game, but a game that addressed the issue of socializing, about bringing people together in social contexts. And I thought, wow, this is wild. I mean, people game for a lot of reasons. They game because they like the idea of creating competence and competitiveness. Yeah. Sometimes they do it for escapism, but and the other is relatedness or social needs. But all of the students chose to create games that address social concerns. So you could see that there's an underlying understanding. It's almost like a latent need to connect with people.
100%, and I see that all the time too. I hear about more stories about, whether you're a young person and you feel isolated, or whether you're a senior and you feel isolated as you age. That is increasingly. We're just maybe getting away from that. And how could we? I'm not expecting you to answer that question or solve that problem, but maybe that's something that we should be thinking about: is how do we bring technology into play so that we create a world where we have less isolation and less loneliness, perhaps.
Yeah,
I
think, and that's why I'm so excited about immersive spaces. So, within the next 4 or 5 years, you'll be able to meet your whole family, sit around a boardroom table, and we would all be indistinguishable, similar to what it would be like what we're experiencing right now. So I think hopefully that's where technology starts to bring people together and connect people socially. So we could be playing a board game together, again, remotely from everywhere in Canada or everywhere in the world, and having social experiences that we could not otherwise have.
Very good, very good. Dan, give me the name of your company, if you're comfortable doing that. What is the name of your company, and tell us some neat things that you're kind of doing these days.
So the main company right now is ToonRush,
Yep.
and we do animation and games and AI applications. So right now, one of the exciting games we're doing is something called Zodiac Attack. It's a sort of a Mario Kart style game where we take all the characters of the Chinese zodiac and they basically become racing cars and they compete against each other. So we're reenacting the famous race of the Chinese zodiac. It's a fun video game. We've got about 20 people on it, and we've been working on it for the better part of 6 months now.
Very cool.
It's going to be released before Chinese New Year, so that's a fun project we're working on.
Very cool. I know there's some projects that your partner Natalie is working on as well that's very cool.
Yes.
Would you be able to comment on that a little bit?
So she has a wonderful app called Gratatouille. So it's available in a Oculus Quest headset. So you basically put the headset on and you could travel to a beach pretty much anywhere in the world. Interestingly, I was in Asia and I just shot a couple beaches for her in just on the east coast of Malaysia. So over the last 2 or 3 years, we've been going to various places in the world. So now you can visit a beach in the Caribbean, most places in Europe. She's going to Greece next month. They're going to shoot beaches in Greece, so pretty represented all over the world. Yeah,
Oh, that's very cool.
and it's a calming app. You know, when you put the headset on and you're on a beach in the Caribbean, it's really calming. It's a
Very good.
yeah,
Very good.
and you meditate.
Yeah, very nice. Very nice. Well, everybody, we've been talking to Dan Hawes today. Dan and I go back, like I mentioned earlier, probably, I'm losing the years now, Dan, probably 45 years. Things don't get old with Dan. Every time I speak with Dan, I learn something new. He's got his finger on the pulse in many different areas. And Dan, I appreciate you joining the show today and talking to us about all these projects and all these things that you have going on. So thanks very much for joining us today.
Thanks, Kev. Honored to be in the discussion.
Beautiful.
All right.